Our final session explores how AI is being used to reshape the service industry, from marketing to consulting to entertainment and beyond. We're going to welcome our panelists. This is going to go for about 20 minutes or half an hour, and then we have our final wrap-up. Would you please welcome from Waverly, CEO Philippe Baudouin. Come on out here, Philippe. From ShareThrough, CEO Jean-François Côté. Welcome, nice to have you here. From Radio-Canada CBC, Maxime Saint-Pierre. Maxime. And co-host you're back. Beta Kid Podcast is back with us to moderate. Rob Kennedy, nice to have you back on stage. Take it away, Rob.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing? How has the show been for you, everybody? Oh, that's great applause. I appreciate it. You can't hear that on the stream. Great applause. Thanks very much. I'm Rob Kennedy. I advise startups, and I'm the co-host of the Beta Kid podcast. And thanks, everyone, for sticking around for us. Thanks to the Prime Minister for leading in for us, which is really much appreciated. Why don't we start by introducing ourselves? So why don't we start with you, Philippe?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Phil Baudouin. I'm the CEO, co-founder of a company called Waverly. And we're building healthier social networks using generative AI, conversational AI, so that people can control their feed and make sure they create spaces in which they have healthier conversations than what you can get, let's say, on other social networks. So yeah, very much AI native, born here out of the AI ecosystem of Montreal, and reaching for the stars.
Awesome. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much to be there, guys. Jeff Côté, I'm the co-founder, CEO of ShareThrough. And for people from Montreal, the original District 10, when we bought ShareThrough 3 years ago. What we're doing is we are an ad tech company, advertising technology. We are building, technology software to help the advertiser to reach their audience at any kind of moment with the screen. Could be a TV, a phone, a laptop, whatever. And why AI is important for us is we're managing 160 billion ads per day globally around the world. And this is why we have tons of data. And with this data, we need to make sure we build the best algos with AI, machine learning, and all this. This is why we invest. We start with Scale AI and Move AI 3 years ago. And we really start this journey with them. And we just accelerate and build a very good team internally to manage and create, the best algos to perform better. This is what we're doing in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Maxime.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Maxime Saint-Pierre, je suis le directeur général des médias numériques chez Radio-Canada. Donc, je suis en charge de tous les produits grand public qui sont numériques, en plus de gérer l'équipe d'apprentissage machine. So, my name is Maxime Saint-Pierre. I'm the head of digital for CBC Radio-Canada, so for French services. But I manage everything related to digital products, but also machine learning development within CBC and Radio-Canada. So, nice to meet you all.
Bonne idée d'y aller en français aussi. Hein?
That's okay. That's okay. I think it sounded like you were saying the same. But so, okay, well, thanks for sticking around, everyone. This is going to be a non-traditional panel. We're going to have a good time. You're dealing with a couple of very seasoned entrepreneurs, a seasoned enterprise, somebody who's dealt with entrepreneurs, and all these folks have dealt with AI in real ways. So we're going to get right into it. Let's maybe start with you, Philippe. The first kick at the AI can, maybe 5-6 years ago, was every company would just put .ai at the end of their domains, and they were magically an AI company. How do you come across, if you're building an AI-focused company, how do you come across as a AI company? And again, we should define what AI means these days, but how do you stop looking like you're just capitalizing on hype and actually building a real company?
I think it's hard, right? Everybody's like, there's so much hype being built around AI all the time. It's like all of these tech. So it pops up, everybody's like, yeah, I'm an AI, I'm an AI, I'm an AI. It's not easy. I think, bottom line is like, don't tell bullshit, I guess, right? Yeah, yeah. It is all about, like, what are you really doing? How are you using it? Some people would say, hey, if you're not building your own model, you're not really doing AI. I don't think it's true. I'm actually like an AI researcher. I did my PhD and that stuff. I've worked with people who build model. I've built some myself. And this new company, we're not building our own model. We're leveraging a bunch of things that exist out there because it's enough to prove what we're doing. But it's all about these like prompt engineering, all about how do we use these things well to create something new. So Yeah, I think you just stay honest. What are you doing? What are you not doing? How are you thinking about using AI? Don't drop the word for no reason. Point to an actual feature that is using it. I think that's all. That's how you build a truly honest company that doesn't picture itself as I'm an AI company. But more specifically, the way in which personally, I think AI is changing the game right now is by giving people more agency. Like what these generative and conversational AI tools are doing is basically saying, hey, I can listen to you now. I don't know, like before I was just looking at what you were doing on your computer screen or on your phone. Now I can have a conversation with you and maybe understand the way in which what you're doing is not aligned with what you want to do. This is the new power. This is something that computers couldn't do before. I actually think that if you start using AI in this way to give people more agency, well, you're a true modern AI company.
And do you find, like, Jeff, with your company that folks are like, oh yeah, AI ads, sure, whatever? Or like, how do you work that into the conversation and be like, no, there's actually something happening here?
Yeah, I think, if you take a look at the last 10 years, because we started the business 10 years ago, nobody was talking about AI, right? Because we're doing lots of data, lots of algorithm to maximize and all this. And we see really, in 2014, 15, 16, when really, and it's a buzzword in Montreal because we're one of the leading, platform in the world in terms of AI, really where people start to talk about, it's AI. What about machine learning? We need to hire data scientists. And really was just a bit of people was scared of this, like you said, a bit of bullshit or fluff, right? And really what I saw is the last 3 years, really the journey of AI become much more mature in terms of, not mature in terms of is already there, but people start to organize themselves, start to build teams,
But I guess my point is, the pendulum is swung in the other direction, where everybody's got an AI company, and you're like, sure, you have an AI company.
But this is the point, is now, people are able to claim,
yes,
we use AI,
yes,
versus the .ai to your first question.
Yeah.
Before that, you create the domain name with .ai. It was bullshit. My point is, it's normal. It's a new trend, and people start to adopt, and now it's through AI and have a real impact, and the future would just accelerate on this.
So, Maxime, I'm thinking, one thing that's quite topical now, and by the way, in case you can't tell from the title, we're totally going off script.
I was asking.
That is actually a trick. We're talking about building AI companies and the things you need to think about when you're implementing AI. That's what we're generally talking about for enterprises, for startups, all that other stuff. So, Maxime, when you think about, if you think about what's going on in the news, for those of you following the news, I mean, basically the Writers Guild strike is about the fear of AI, at least. And you saw, I guess, last week, George R.R. Martin, John Grisham, and even Sarah Silverman are suing OpenAI, saying you scraped my data. Now I'm out of a job. You can't do that. Bad, bad, bad. So, as an enterprise and a company who has to be on top of where your users and customers are, but also have to be careful, you don't want to be subject to one of those lawsuits. How do you think about those tools when you're thinking about how to use them? How does that make you hesitant? How do you evaluate what to do?
So, as a crown corporation, sometimes people think that we're old school and we never even touched AI, but we've been doing AI for many years now.
Right.
So, when we started to play with AI at the beginning, it was mostly building partnerships, making sure we have data scientists that can support us, but eventually understand the anatomy or how we can deconstruct where is AI going at the moment, because we knew eventually that everything related to right management or everything related to creators, as also how we could make sure that we had all the right information and the right signals so we would better serve Canadians, but also at the same time make sure that we respect, we are fully transparent in how we do this work, but in the end, that AI is helping creators and not the opposite. So the main thread underneath is that. So we started really early, but in the end, it's because we know that we will need to tackle some very difficult questions that, in some cases, many enterprises, they just look at the bottom line.
Right.
But it's not our case.
Right. I mean, we've been around the block in technological society to know if you don't think a little bit further ahead, you're going to be bitten, and there's kind of no excuse anymore. Do you think, Philippe, to you, with Waverly, you're building a product that, it's a social news platform, right? So I think we spoke about this before, but there's a really great article on The Verge when Elon Musk took over Twitter. The editor-in-chief wrote an article saying, "Welcome to hell, Elon," about moderating a social network. You now have to convince other partners and folks to play with you. That's why you're sitting on that. He's on the timeout side of the stage. How do you turn around and say, no, this is not what I promised you. It's not going to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I was about to ask you, Maxime, with all that's happening with Canadian news being banned from the social networks and places like that, I almost feel like, hey, if we're too shy about building our own stuff on there, like we're always going to be a bit like tributaire, right? Or we'll always be
branch plant economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like at some point, is it possible that we're too afraid or too scared, or we just need to try a bit more, to be a bit more bold with these technologies and say, hey, maybe there's a way to use them that that would actually be compatible. That's actually what we think. Like when you look at generative AI, you can very easily, the first thing people imagine is what I call the crap tsunami of content that's going to be generated by marketing out there, and just like, hey, I'm going to sell you the same thing and ask GPT to write it 20 different ways, go past your spam filter, and then you'll get things you don't want. But when we think about generative AI at Waverly, that's not how we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it as, can we help more people give more context to their friends, to those around them? Because that's what we're missing. It's not that, well, there's a lot of bad content out there. But one of the biggest problems is that it's hard to find a good content. And once we found it, we don't have really good tools to say, hey, maybe that, that should be interesting to us. So this idea of using these tools to help people give more context about the things they care for, the good things they think, and to the people they care about, sounds like a pretty good project. It's not going to be Elon Musk project. It's not going to be Meta's project. Maybe it can be our own, and we can work together to make something like that happen.
This is, okay, you've kind of sliced into two pieces here. First of all, you've got the startup enterprise problem. You can take risks.
Yeah.
He can take some risk, but it's an established brand. You rely on them for news. When there's a wildfire, you want to know that actually is a wildfire, not because some troll tweeted it. So you can afford to get it wrong a few times. He can't. But I'm more interested in the AI component of it, because normally you evaluate startups and companies that you choose to work with, all of you, even your subcontractors and your partners, you evaluate them based on a whole bunch of criteria. Now you have to layer on this, is this AI going to murder my customers kind of thing. How do you aside from that, how would you work together? All of you, how would you work together knowing the AI problem?
We're really open to use AI as a company. The thing is, we have many standards that we impose to ourselves, like journalistic standards.
Yes.
So when we publish a news, we need to make sure it's verified, not once but twice. So based on that, for sure, we do it differently. And every commercial off-the-shelf solutions, and we will see with AI where it goes in terms of generative AI, most of the time it doesn't answer the needs that we have for serving Canadians. So that's why it's very different, because we do have, we're legally bound to rights management and make sure we pay creators and artists. We want to make sure that in the end, in terms of the newsroom, we respect all those standards. So that's why I say we have to do it differently. So the first thing we've built is a recommendation engine. But the brief was not, let's just make sure we build a kind of an echo chamber and try to make sure everyone goes see the same type of content. The brief was, let's make sure that when we do this, we have a 100-degree view of what other things are available on our platforms, so we make sure that these type of contents are also are able to be discovered at the same time. So the recommendation engine is really easy to understand because it's mainstream today, but we need to do the same thing for all the other types of algorithms or type of AI we're using today. So yes, there are challenges. I mean, ChatGPT, it's amazing, but at some point, when it goes against our own standards, this is why we need a different path, a different way, just to tackle those issues. It's possible. It just needs a little bit more brain juice, I would say.
Yeah. Do you think, JF, like, you know, the problem with it is there's a lot of opacity to the it's effectively a black box. Maybe you know what the inputs are into that black box, but the actual machinery, you know sort of mathematically how it works, but nobody actually knows what's happening. So there's always been a trust issue with adoption of technology. Now you have this thing that even the people who make it don't totally get it. And interestingly, every time you put in a request, the output is not deterministic like it is on a normal computer. Every time right? Like that's just a new feature of AI. Do you have to worry about that? Because when you're making promises to your customers and you have to worry about things like bias and all these other things, how do you unpack that to make sure that when you're selling to, say, Maxime or somebody like that, you're like, no, I promise you no pornography will show up in my ads. I promise you.
Yeah, this is a very good one, because I remember 10 years ago, I was at Radio-Canada and was pitching my technology. And he said to me, you know what, we cannot have on Radio-Canada English ads. And that was back in the days in Quebec, 10 years ago, La Presse was all this. And we built up back in the days a tool to intercept, to make sure we respect all the language and all the others, variable they need to follow. And this is an example for Radio-Canada, but it's something else with example, Walmart, right? Sure. Walmart don't want, competitors' ads on this. And the AI help us to be able to build this, because think about that, us is in less than 400 milliseconds, every time, when you load your phone, ads happen, is in less than 400 milliseconds, we send a bid to a data center, we come back, and all the variable will be there. This is why now, before that, 5 years ago, was 2.5 seconds. Why we're much more faster is the cloud and also AI. But one thing I think when you mentioned about respectful about the journalism, and you said about John Grisham and all the folks there, that is massive. That is massive, And I was in the Valley a month ago, and a friend of mine just building now AI to help the authors, right, the John Grisham and all this, how to protect, because you see the ChatGPT and all, the generative AI and all this will become very, against them. And poor journalists, right? We need to protect that.
Yeah, and let's pull on that thread a little bit. I was talking to Dr. Lucioni earlier on the podcast, and tune in, everybody. And she was saying that, cool, even if that data was were baked into OpenAI, into the model, you can't untrain that piece of it. You can't say, here's the firm, now go untrain that portion of the AI. You kind of have to just do it again. So I guess what I'm wondering, I want to go back to the point that you were making before, Philippe. As Canada and Quebec and Canada writ large, basically we're not America, and we are subject to a lot of the technologies, the policies, the ideas. Like even with GDPR, we didn't write GDPR. The Europeans wrote GDPR, and we took it and added a few letters into it, and then it's our kind of flavor of law. How do we lead? We have the brains in this country, that's obvious. We've always had a commercialization problem in this country. That's still true, notwithstanding the folks on stage. How do we not become subject to the whatever laws Google feels like adopting today? How do we take control of our destiny if we have, is there something that you can do with the companies that you're building or the policies that you're advocating for that can actually say, no, Canada's a leader here, this is the right thing to do, and we will take control of our own destiny?
We build our own things.
You build your own thing.
We build it. We have what it takes. The question then becomes, how do we build our own things? But I think we at least need to start with that mindset. We can build stuff. We can build great things here. The Americans invest in Canadians all the time because they trust us. Maybe sometimes we should trust ourselves a bit more. Maxime, you talked about journalistic standards, all of that. I think they're super important. This is why we're building Waverly so we can have platforms that actually recognizes the importance of journalism, great journalists. But at the same time, it feels whenever we start a conversation about these things, it's always fear. It's always, oh, wait, we have all these constraints. We need spaces in which to experiment. And these spaces shouldn't be hindered immediately by a bunch of constraints. Otherwise, I'm not saying to do things recklessly, but I'm saying we need we need experimentation spaces, and we need an experimentation mindset, an innovation mindset, and sometimes I feel we don't have it. And it's not necessarily like people are, oh yeah, it's funding. It's not necessarily funding, it's the eye roll you get when you pitch something like, we're building a social network in Canada. I'm doing that, I've been doing that for the last 3 years, and at first it wasn't a social network, because whenever I was pitching this, I was getting eye rolls. People are like, oh, you're never gonna do it. It's like, we need to take some of these shots. We need to take some of these shots, otherwise we'll always be begging those who take them. So that's basically what I guess my message here is, like, yeah, a bit bolder, a bit more innovative, create spaces where fear is not the first thing we put in front of enthusiastic, optimistic people who want to build things differently. I think we have a lot to gain. Our value systems are totally different from what you have in the States. It will lead to very different products if we dare build them.
And again, don't get me wrong, we really like AI, but the challenge always is we've built models where we evaluate diversity of point of views. I mean, we've built synthetic voice, but why it's not out there? Because we still believe today that when we put the human at the center of the discussion and the reflection, we're not there yet. We're not ready to replace a news anchor right now with a synthetic voice. We don't want to do this because when we mention it in terms of disinformation, fake news, I mean, now all the medias are struggling right now with what's already in place, and it's going to be 10 times, 1,000 times more faster than it is right now. So do we really want to go there? At some point, we want to make sure we understand how it works, but it will take time. So it's not fear, it's just making it right. And that's different in my point of view.
And how do you know, like, back to you, JF, how do you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you're building, there's the machine learning models, which are sort of baked, to your point earlier. Most people aren't generating their own machine learning models. How do you make sure that the data set you're using really is what colors it? How do you make sure that it's not biased, and how to, like, we don't have rules. I know we had Minister Champagne the other day say, hey, there's a code of conduct that we think we should follow, which we're also collectively making up as we go. Do you just do that? You're like, internally, here's the things that we believe in ethically, and these are the things we will train, and these are the things we're not trained. So you're making a judgment call, you're choosing to exclude stuff. Is that how you're running your businesses to make sure that they are viable?
For us, we're very lucky. They call it the IAB, Internet Advertising Bureau.
Yes.
It's around the world. And these guys define the rules of Internet. And
that still applies to AI-generated stuff, because the content you're putting in is right.
Exactly.
It's just about how it displays it.
My point is the IAB, right, include now all the AI function and all the variable to make sure a company like me or my competitors will not start to crushing whatever, right? We follow guidance,
right,
because we have standard, right, industry standard, and that helps us in terms of Internet. But it's true, Internet is the Far West sometimes, right? The rules are gray. Nothing is really, because it's still early, right? It's 20 years, 25 years of Internet. And AI is just recent. This is why all these fears, like you said, but in fact, if you take the opposite, is the opportunity is so big, right? Internet is undefined, and you could grab it, and it's the old days of the gold rush, right? And this is why, take from 95 to now, right? The numbers of giants become, right, with the social media, right? The phone, we talk about this. This is what AI is the next things, and it will be defined over time, but for sure, you need to take risks to push the limit.
True, I just think that, as a society, we've learned the move fast and break things was move fast and break society, right? So we're not going to repeat it the same way we did before. We should have learned our lesson, fool me once kind of thing. Did you have any hot takes on how you make sure that you control the inputs to your machine learning model, so you have an idea and you use your ethics or your values to guide what you put in?
For sure, we do have a code of conduct, so we want to make sure that we follow this code of conduct.
Do you have to update that for AI, or is that just
in terms of transparency? Make sure we keep trust with our audiences. I mean, all these things are taken into consideration just before doing everything, because we don't want to cross that line. So transparency is really important, but transparency within the end-to-end process. So and you mentioned sales and revenues and ads, so it's in everything. And that's why we need as a company to develop our critical thinking regarding generative AI and AI as a whole, because in the end, there are so many fields we're touching as a company that we need to make sure that these code of conducts are at some point a framework we can follow so we don't cross the line. Because if we cross that line at one place, we cross it everywhere in terms of the perception of the public service.
Yeah.
We have a very important guideline too. It goes a bit along those lines, and it's basically saying generative AI is super powerful. What we need to make sure is that it never steals the agency of the person. You always feel like you are the creator of the piece. You are using a creative process in order to get to some place that you want to get to. That's what we ask people who use Waverly, who test Waverly. Do you feel you created this? Do you feel that you work towards something? Are you proud of this? Are you proud to put it out? And I think it's a pretty good measure of how we can use generative AI in order to empower people instead of saying, hey, let's just use it to throw more things that people don't care about out there.
That's a good optimistic note to end on. I'm on a trend this panel. As we leave, everybody could just on the way. Everyone's going to go home now in their cars, their walks, their trains, their planes. Is there a piece of media that you've been consuming recently that has stuck with you that would really be something for everyone to listen to on the way home?
Yeah. So very quickly, I recommend Stand Out of Our Light, James William, a little book. It's small, it's tiny, but it captures everything about the attention economy. If you have parents, read that. It's going to help you understand your kids. It's going to help you understand society. Very good book.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
A book? I'm reading a book now. Is the founder of Netflix, about how they create Netflix. If you talk about pushing limits, it's a very good book.
Right? Awesome. And Maxime?
A video that went out a few months ago, the AI dilemma. So it is Tristan Harris that did the social dilemma on Netflix. Now, if you look at it, it's amazing where they go, but at some point, you need to make sure that you have also a critical view on this, but it brings you elsewhere.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sticking around for the last panel. We have one more thing to go, but thanks very much, everybody, for coming to the panel, and thanks to the panelists for being here.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks.